Okay, so good morning, everybody. And I'm Dr. Vivek. I'm a psychiatrist and I work at. Am I audible to all? Yes, right. Okay, so
Yes,
I'm a psychiatrist and I work at Renai Medicity Hospital, Cochin. So today I'm going to talk to you and give you certain tips about how to manage stress during this difficult period. Say from March, April, May, June, and it is continuing. It is a difficult period for all of us, not just for young people, for children, young, old, everyone working, studying. It's been a huge change for us. It's a new normal. Like things which were very normal for us, going out, talking, interacting, social interactions, all have been curtailed. Though we want to do it, it's not possible. We are asked to wear masks. We are asked to wash our hands. We are asked not to get out of the house unnecessarily. So the basic thing about humans is the social interaction. That is something which we are asking people not to do. Secondly, one thing which we always, like psychiatrists as me, always tell people is reduce screen time. Unfortunately, now this is the only way we can communicate. So there should be a effective, or it should be a proper use of the screen too. So and even yesterday, the people coming with these issues have increased. It could be stress, it could be anxiety, it could be job related issues, it could be pay cuts, it could be layoffs, it could be marital problems, difficulty managing homes, difficulty managing work, home, children, studies, look after the old people. So sometimes it is very difficult to multitask, and it is more for the females now. And when for the males, the problem now is they have to step in now. They can't tell that they have to go out and work. They are at home, so they have to help out. So there have been a multitude of issues over the last few months, and the way things are going, it could extend for a longer period. So in this talk, I will be divided into three parts. The first part is how can you identify stress or anxiety in your life? Two, how can you handle it at your level? And three, the third part will be on some questions which you have sent anonymously, which I'll be discussing. Most of them I'll be discussing in my discussion itself. So these are some people whom I've been seeing for the last 2 to 3 months. One was a 22-year-old BBS. I'm audible, right? Moderators, I'm audible, right? Yeah.
yes, Doctor.
Yes, doctor.
Okay. So you can see the screen, right? So this was a 22-year-old BBA student who presented with a casualty with deep cut marks on his hand after he had a breakup with his girlfriend during lockdown time. There was a history of low mood, withdrawn behavior, decreased talk, and increased cannabis use. The second person was an IT employee who had difficulty breathing, chest pain, loss of consciousness. He was abruptly terminated from his job due to lack of projects, and all the physical tests were negative. The third person was a 45-year-old lady who presented with complaints of increased washing of hands, plates, grocery, to a point where her hands were red and swollen. And she would get up at night repeatedly to wash, fearing coronavirus. Another one was a 17-year-old 12th standard student who presented with anxiety, tension, crying spells, decreased sleep at night after she could not understand what was being taught in her math online classes. So like the cases I mentioned, which is just the tip of the iceberg, like a lot of people are being affected in different ways due to this epidemic. What is stress? It is a state of disharmony or threat to our homeostasis, our normal self. What is coping? It is an ability to maintain control, think rationally, problem solve. And what is resilience? Resilience is how we recover quickly and thrive in spite of adversity. So stress is there, and you need to cope with it, and you need to bounce back. That is the whole point. So stress is of different types. Like there's something called eustress. That is a little bit of stress. Like before an exam, if you have stress, or if you have a little bit of stress, you'll study. Otherwise, you'll never study. Distress is when it becomes uncontrollable, prolonged, and it could be destructive. There could be acute stress, which is due to an immediate problem in life. It could be a chronic stress, which is for a longer period. So what happens when this stress continues? It could lead to something called a burnout, where the psychological differences of the person to adapt and cope collapses, and you have physical and emotional exhaustion. Okay, so that is a burnout. And the whole point of this talk is how to identify stress, how to cope up with it, so that you can bounce back and be resilient and avoid the situation which I mentioned now, which is a burnout. And the most important thing is anyone can suffer from burnout. It could be my youngest patient could be a 4 or 5-year-old, and the oldest patient I have is 95-year-old. So age no bar, and it is not a sign of weakness. Anybody can suffer from anxiety in any period of your life, and the bottom line is it can be treated, overcome, and prevented. So the whole point is it should be prevented, and if you can't prevent it, you need to treat and overcome it so that you move on. So this is a usual healthy stress pattern, which you can see. There is a stress, but finally you bounce back. But when you have an unhealthy stress pattern, this is what you see. You simply can't bounce back and you move to a breakdown. So what is the stress response? There is normal stress, there is abnormal stress, there is burnout, and there is impairment. So I had many questions, many queries, which I'll be incorporating in my talk so that we don't have to waste a lot of time at the end. So everybody has anxiety, everybody has tension. But when do you tell it is becoming a disorder or it is a cause of concern? When it extends for a long period, it is persistent, it is continuously there, it is pervasive, and the frequency and intensity increases over the days, and it starts affecting your functioning. Functioning ennu parnal pravartanam. That is, it affects your sleep, your appetite, your interpersonal relationship. Interpersonal relationship meaning nammada vyakti bandham, that is your relationship with your friends, your relatives, your classmates, and it starts affecting your studies and your maybe work. So if it extends to a big point, it becomes a burnout. So there are many stages. One could be the alert stage, the resistance stage, and the exhaustion stage. So what you see is when stress or anxiety comes in your life, you see something called a fight or flight response. So that is like, say, sometimes like all of us would have gone through something, a difficult situation in life, like a snake comes in front of you. What do? You just try to get away from that place, or you try to kill it. So these are the natural mechanisms which our body has empowered us. So this is called the first stage, in which you become alert, respiration increases, your muscles become tense, etc. Your adrenaline is pumped. So this is a way in which your body tries to condition itself to that stress. The next stage is a resistance stage. That is, it is not as intense as the alarm stage, but if you can get over it, then your body can revert to the normal phase. The third stage is the exhaustion stage, where it is something called learned helplessness. You have lost all resistance and all bodily systems have been deleted, and you move on to something called adaptation. So we try to, in stress management, we try to prevent the stages from moving to the third stage, which is exhaustion or burnout. So stressors are multiple. It could be work stressors, it could be individual stressors, etc. And one more thing which I want to stress is there are some people who comment, like many of you will feel that it is just stress in life which leads to anxiety, tension, depression. No. Unfortunately, 50% of people who stress will develop anxiety. Of course, stress can worsen it. It is like what do you call an old, it's like a vehicle moving over a bridge. The bridge is your body and your bodily defenses. The bridge can collapse due to multiple reasons. It could be because the bridge is weak and the girders in it are weak, or it could be because an overloaded truck is going over it. So the girders are the biological or your stress capability, and the what do you call that overloaded truck could be the anxiety, stress in your life, or it could be a combination of both. That is, you are predisposed to stress, that is girders are weak, plus an overloaded truck, which is stress comes into life. So it could be due to many reasons. And what are the general symptoms? It is usually negative symptoms like feeling of frustration, anxiety, angry, depressed, dissatisfied. You feel tired most of the times. Like ഇപ്പൊ മലയാളത്തിൽ പറഞ്ഞു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ എപ്പോഴും ഒരു ക്ഷീണം, വയ്യായ്മ, ഉന്മേഷക്കുറവ്, ഉണർവില്ലായ്മ, ശുഭാപ്തി വിശ്വാസക്കുറവ്, തളർച്ച, ശ്രദ്ധക്കുറവ്, സന്തോഷക്കുറവ് തുടങ്ങിയ കാര്യങ്ങൾ. And what happens is your interpersonal problems or interpersonal issues go for a toss. There is increasing communication difficulty with your co-workers, friends, family stress, less time spent together, tendency to withdraw and neglect other relationships. It could affect your job performance, the quantity and quality could decrease. There is a meaningless in life. The enthusiasm is replaced by cynicism. Cynicism. That is, you feel helpless, hopeless, worthless, etc. So what are the symptoms? It could be physiological, psychological, and behavioral. That it means it could be things like loss of appetite, weight loss, trembling, fatigue, decreased sleep, anger, depression, malaise, etc. So some of your friends had actually mailed me, had sent anonymous messages asking what is depression. See, everybody feels depressed some part of your life, but depression becomes a disorder when it starts affecting your sleep, your appetite, your relationship with others. It starts affecting what we call your work functioning, job, etc. Okay, so that is when it becomes a disorder, and these are some of the features of anxiety, depression. And it could, when everybody thinks about psychological problems, but it could also be you have present as certain somatic or physical complaints. It could be headaches, colds, it could be stomach pains, it could be heart pounding, palpitations, it could be breathlessness, shwasamutalam, it could be feeling aches and pains all over the body. It could be feeling heat when there is no heat. It could be your mouth feeling dry. It could be unexplained weight loss. So all this could be features of anxiety. And basically symptoms like emotional exhaustion. You feel tired most of the time. You feel depersonalized. There is reduced personal accomplishment, etc. could be seen. And what are the behavioral consequences? When stress becomes a distress, your job performance falls. Workplace accidents are more common. For small provocations, you may overreact. And overstressed employees and students could have high levels of absenteeism. Yesterday, a person had come to see me. He had presented with complaints of difficulty remembering, but he just was a 55-year-old. But it was due to his anxiety, stress that he had a difficulty remembering information, making decisions, etc. He was working as a clerk in a government department, but now he used to make silly mistakes. He could not focus. He would lose interest, etc. So he was sent by the neurologist because he went to the neurologist telling that he has got dementia or he's got memory problems. While unfortunately, it was the anxiety levels which is making him do so. So if you treat the anxiety in many cases, you have to rule out a dementia or a actual problem. But once you rule that out, if it is anxiety, if you reduce the anxiety, your attention issues can be taken care of. What are the signs of excessive stress? It could be confusions in thinking. It is called ambivalence. Should I do or should I not do? Difficulty making decisions. It could be increased heart rate. It could be a rapid breathing. It could be signs of depression, which I mentioned before. It could be change in eating habits. So what we see now is lockdown time, many people have increased their weight. That is because there is something called binge eating. You eat to reduce your anxiety. Then you feel guilt. Again, anxiety comes, you again eat. So it becomes a vicious cycle. Feeling overwhelmed. It is hopeless, helpless, worthless. Negative feelings about self, the future around you, people around you. Headache, sleep disturbances. It could be decreased sleep or increased sleep. It could be difficulty concentrating, getting angry, upset stomach. That is, there is something called irritable bowel syndrome. That is, anxiety can worsen it. Like you feel like going to the toilet repeatedly. Even after defecating, you feel like it is not complete. Your stomach feels full, upset stomach, job dissatisfaction. All are signs of excessive stress. And one most important thing, now what we've seen is after the bar, etc., after the bars and the beverages are opened, what we've seen is substance abuse has also increased. Just yesterday, I had a patient who had stopped drinking, but because he had anxiety, his business was not going well. He tried to get a token to buy alcohol. He didn't get it, so but he needed to get it, so he got it through some other person by paying extra. Instead of buying one bottle, he bought 3 bottles. He drank 2 bottles, and yesterday he was admitted with severe alcohol withdrawal, alcohol intoxication. So many of these people, instead of trying to solve the problems, they find destructive coping mechanisms like using more alcohol, more drugs, poor eating, drinking more coffee, smoking more cigarettes. So all these destructive coping mechanisms, what they do is they do not actually solve your problems. For 1 or 2 hours, you can forget it. But again, it comes back, and actually, instead of giving relief, it actually worsens your problem. It is like adding oil to the fire. The തീയിലെ എണ്ണ ഒഴിക്കുന്ന effect ആണ് വരുന്നത്. Okay, so some people react emotionally in extreme, exaggerated ways. You get angry. Like just today, one girl had called me. She's a patient of mine. She has a personality problem. What she said was, because her parents were misbehaving with her, instead of trying to fight with them, she started injuring herself. She started hitting herself, banging her head. So banging your head does not solve your problem. You need to solve your problem and move on. So when you have destructive coping, you start withdrawing from things, withdrawing from pleasant activities. And some people work more. But instead of that, this further diminishes your physiological resilience. So like I mentioned before, it could present with a lot of physical complaints like diminished immunity. Such people who have stress could develop a lot of illnesses. They have headache, fatigue, they feel tired, there is weight gain, you have cholesterol problems, your pressure shoots up, you get heart disease, things like skin diseases like psoriasis, digestive problems, anxiety, depression, alcoholism, substance abuse, irritable bowel, which I mentioned before, like you frequently have to go to the toilet, your stomach feels full, you feel like vomiting, fibromyalgia. This is usually seen in females, middle-aged females, like multiple aches, pains, etc. You do multiple investigations, nothing comes. You do multiple scanning, nothing comes. Decreased sexual drive. This is also a major problem these days. There is a major issue, and which is unfortunately missed out unless asked. So now we move on to the second part of our discussion, where till now I was explaining on what is stress and how do you identify stress, because multiple times what we see is only when it becomes a distress, or only when it becomes a suicidal attempt, or only when it becomes like you are like lose your job, do they come to you. It is all about prevention. So what can we do? The first and most important thing is to know yourself. That is, know your limitation. What are your good points? What are your bad points? How long, how much can you stretch yourself? Gauge your reactions. Learn to take each day one step at a time. Become a stress expert. Right? Like that is the first part, how it affects your mind and body. And the most important thing is, don't do nothing. If you think you're getting burned out and the symptoms, at least speak to someone about it. Many of your problems, if you talk to somebody about it, 50% of your problems come down. Yesterday, I had an engineering student. She's an architecture student, actually. She had multiple issues, but what she said to me was that she would not talk to her mother, because if she talked to her mother, she was worried her problems would overwhelm her mother. But when we asked her to talk to her mother, the problems came down. So 50% of your problems can come down if you share it with somebody. So we can have a 12-point personal plan. That is, identify the sources of pressures in your life. That is, become a stress expert and try to identify what are the sources. So it is all about identifying the sources of your life. Then tackle the cause of your stressor by certain smart goals. That is, it should be specific. If you have multiple problems, you try to solve all of them, nothing works. So work on a specific problem. It should be measurable, that how big or small it is. It should be achievable. Tomorrow I tell I want to buy a Mercedes Benz, I don't think I can do it, but something which is achievable, and it should be realistic, and of course time bound. So it should be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. And you need to prioritize. Sometimes all your problems cannot be solved in one day. Some problems are beyond, like as of now, COVID, economy, recession, job loss. Sometimes some things are beyond your control, but there are some things which you can do. So prioritize on things which you can work on and make a difference. You need to monitor your progress and reward your success and examine failures. So that is very important. When you are in a negative mood, that is, nothing is working, etc., small successes which will improve your confidence and make you do better, and you need to examine your failures and failure is supposed to be a stepping stone to success. So you identify your failures, learn from it so that you don't repeat the same mistake again and again. So there are certain other strategies. One most important thing is to be assertive. Assertive is not to tell no for everything, but to tell yes at the right place and no at the right place. Next is relaxation. 3, venting, that is talking to somebody. Avoid this faulty thinking. Nothing will work. Everything will be hopeless. My life is all messed up. No, you need to replace it with the positive thoughts. Build and develop social support networks. You need to have a social support system, conflict management, and of course, time management. Now, one major issue now is that nobody has to go to office, nobody has to go to school. So there are kids who get up at 7:30, brush their teeth, 8 o'clock, without any taking a bath, they sit in front of their online classes. I think it's the same with college students too. So other than a small group who have to go to office or school or college, everybody works from home. But don't change your schedule. The schedule should be same as how you used to do before. And of course, sleep. Now what is happening is, instead of sleeping at 9, 10, people sleep at 2, get up at 10, again sleep, etc. So you need to have a disciplined, regulated lifestyle, even if it is a lockdown phase. Plan your activities. Plan your activities for that day, for that week, for that month, etc. Evaluate your progress, reward success. Of course, when you start doing this, you will understand that which is your preferred coping style. Maintain positive interactions with other people. That is also very important. The second last one is very important. You need to stay fit and healthy. Even if you can't go out, at least try to do a half an hour of some kind of physical activity. Because we give antidepressants, but there is an antidepressant inside your body. It is called endorphin. And it is released when you work out, when you sweat, when you do some kind of physical activity that you sweat, and that gives the same effect as an antidepressant. And the last and most important thing is get professional help and seek social support if you can't manage it on your own. This is something which many people forget. Stay in control, understand life is stress, that don't let stress control you, and stress is a dynamic process. Life is all about ups and downs. It's a roller coaster ride. You start thinking about the good things you had in life. When you are doing good, don't get arrogant. And when you are in a very deep problem, think about those good things so that it can propel you forward. So, have you heard of something called a behavioral vaccine? Like you have vaccine, everyone is behind a vaccine for COVID. Everyone has vaccines for polio, all the diseases, vaccine preventable diseases. All of us have taken vaccine. But there is something called a behavioral vaccine too. And this is something called life skills. Life skills are certain capacities which all of us internally have, which we can use to solve the problems in life and manage stress better. So according to the World Health Organization, there are things like self-awareness. You try to understand what are your pros and cons. Empathy. Empathy is just not sympathizing with the other person, but being in the other person's shoes. Critical thinking, on critically evaluating things. Creatively thinking and solving and moving on. Decision making and problem solving. Effective communication. Having good interpersonal relationship. Coping with stress. Coping with emotion. So using these things, you can develop a behavioral vaccine for any of your problems. And you need to avoid these maladaptive coping mechanisms like blurring of boundaries, avoidance, negative attitudes, anger outbursts, alcohol, drugs, hopelessness, negative self-talk, resentment, violence. None of these things help. And you can use certain positive things like positive role models who just think about people who are doing good. Like, I'll give you an example. During all these problems where everybody is losing jobs, every business is closing, you must have heard that Reliance Jio has raised actually billions of rupees. So that even during this adversity, he's raised money. There are certain people who are doing real good now. So try to learn from them, their attitudes, their values, their skills, their patterns of thoughts. Try to learn the best practices from them so that you can incorporate it in your life. Be optimistic. Have positive beliefs. because positive beliefs are associated with well-being, cognitive reframing, that you can reframe. Like when negative thoughts come, you can reframe it into positive thoughts, refute the negative thoughts, challenge those negative thoughts. Humor, like you find humor in your situation, and it is a mature coping mechanism. This is also very important. This is called problem solving skills. It consists of identifying the problem, looking at alternative solutions, evaluating the implications of the alternatives, and choosing the best to act upon. This is very easy to tell, but when we land into a problem, unfortunately, all logic, all rational thinking, everything goes for a toss. So you need to identify the problem, you need to generate solutions, at least one, so solution one, solution two, solution three, and you have to look at the solution which gives you good, the best advantages and the minimal advantages, and you need to move on. Of course, religion, spirituality is good, but I'll give you an example. There's a lady admitted, she's from Adur. She had a psychotic episode, that is, she had fearfulness, suspiciousness. They're a highly religious couple, but her husband was like, I will pray to God and cure her. So a little bit of religion and spirituality is good, but if it is more, it is an issue. If it is less, it is an issue. If you find that religion, spirituality helps you, you can pray, you can go to, as of now, don't go to a temple or church or mosque now, because it is pretty, it is not safe now. You can pray at home, but overdoing it is also an issue, because just 2 days back, I had another student. I had another M architecture student who had come. She had too many projects and assignments to do. She was not sleeping, and she was reading religious books too much, and finally she had a breakdown. So everything in a reasonable measure is good, but if it is excessive, it's a cause of concern. Altruism, that is like helping out others, could also help you, motivate you to overcome the stress. Social support is definitely needed. You need to have a social support during the system. Things like muscle relaxation techniques, that is, you can use these muscle relaxation techniques to reduce stress, anxiety in your life. Meditation, of course, can help. There is a 4-step approach. One is called constructive self-talk. You try to motivate yourself that you have a quick recovery. You try to stop these negative thoughts coming into your mind, and you try to mentally divert yourself. Just like I mentioned before, exercise is the most potent and underutilized antidepressant, and the good part is it's free. But all of us have some kind of laziness. We inherit laziness. We don't work out. Today morning also, I felt like I should work out, but somehow something came up and I couldn't work. I couldn't do my usual workout. But at least I'm hoping to do it in the afternoon after I go to my hospital and do the rounds. Anyway, so what happens with exercise is, when you exercise, there are certain neurohormones, there are certain body hormones which are released called endorphins, which makes you feel good and has antidepressant, anti-anxiety effects. So it's free, you can do it, and your body develops and you're anxiety free. Eat right. Though I'm a person advising you to eat right, I had my lunch yesterday only at 3 o'clock. Please don't make such mistakes. You need to eat properly. You need to have a healthy breakfast. You need to have a healthy lunch and a decent, less calorific dinner. What we all do is we miss our breakfast, have a very light lunch, and have a very, very heavy dinner, which all turns into fat. Plus, you have all these things in between, which finally messes things up. So you need to have a balanced diet at the right time. Time management, this is also very important. All of us have 24 hours in our life, 24 hours on a daily basis. We need to use it pretty well, because in this specific period, most of us don't sleep at the wrong time, sleep late, get up late, do things that are not punctual, etc. It's very important that you manage your time well, so that you have time for everything. Time for exercise, time to read, time to communicate with people, not physically, but through other methods like social platforms. You need to work on your studies, etc. Family time. This is also important. You need to find time for your family too. Plus, there is something called personal time or me time. At the end of the day, you should need to give half an hour for yourself, for something you actually do. And one more important thing which was mentioned is, now what we find is many people are into these OTT platforms, Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hotstar, etc., watching, chatting. So hours and hours, these can affect your psychological state. And whatever you see on this social platforms like Facebook, Instagram, etc., need not be an actual representation of reality. So take it all with a pinch of salt, and you need to have real-time relationships. And during this time when everybody is facing financial problems, you need to spend less and save more, because we don't know, we don't have an endpoint for this issue as of now, but we need to have a cautious optimism. Spend only for essentials as of now. And last but not the least, if things get out of control, you need to see somebody, a qualified mental health professional like a doctor, like a psychiatrist, who can help you get out of this problem. So some of you had messaged regarding certain illnesses, etc. You need to understand that if you have an illness, you try to solve it on your own. If not, you need to see somebody. So what we do is, if it is a mild psychological problem, we give behavioral management, not counseling, not talk therapy, but behavioral management on how to solve these problems and move on. Certain behavioral changes. But if it is a moderate to severe problem and it is affecting you deeply, the frequency, intensity is increasing, your functioning is affected, you need to take medicines. Medicines is not to dull your brain, damage your brain, but it is given so that these problems come down and you're more receptive to the therapy, the behavioral therapy. When you combine both, many of these problems can be solved. So the bottom line is, medications are needed for some, and it can help, and it is not lifelong. And please take it only on the recommendations of a qualified mental health professional like a psychiatrist. So thank you for a very patient hearing, and I've come to the end of my second part of the talk, which is how to manage stress better. Now, there are some questions which I'll be answering, and you can send these anonymous queries if you want to your friends, mobile, who will forward it to me. And if you have any issues, you can contact me over my mobile number or through my email. And I'll just discuss certain questions which you had shared with me. Okay, so one of your friends had a problem that he's been in the house for a very long time. He's getting all frustrated. He just can't take his anger out. Okay, so he's taking his anger out. So during such situations, first of all, everybody is frustrated. You need to understand that you need to think in that other person's shoes. All of us, what happens is, when we think only about ourselves, we need to think about others too, and the frustrations they are facing. And if it is out of hand, of course, you need to meet somebody. Next is one person, he said, I've wasted a lot of time during lockdown. I want to achieve something big, but I'm wasting a lot of time. What can I do? Same. All of us are stuck in our past. We can't change our past. Past is past. We can't do anything about it. But what we can work on is our present and future. If you wasted time during the last 2 months, okay, learn from it. Effectively manage your time better so that you can do better. Next is effective screen time and the content. Screen time, ideally, you need to limit. It varies from person to person, but hours and hours of screen time. Like if you have online classes and you've got 4 or 5 hours of screen time, it would be ideal that you don't have screen time, especially on weekdays when you have classes. Try to avoid screen time to the maximum. We can't avoid our phones, or we can't avoid maybe WhatsApp messages, or we may not be able to avoid Facebook, etc. But keep it to a limited time. Say maybe half an hour on a daily basis on weekdays, maybe 1 or 2 hours max on weekends. So then one of your friends was asking me another doubt, which is about pornography. That, see, there is nothing bad about sex, etc. But when it is excessive, when it starts affecting your sleep, your appetite, your relationship with others, you're getting hooked to it, you're getting addicted to it, it is a cause of concern. So everything minimal is okay, but if you're watching it excessively, it's a cause of concern. Then, okay, so another of your friends, what he's telling is, how do you control anger? See, anger is a normal human emotion, just like sadness, anger, feeling happy, etc. is a normal human emotion. Only when it's excessive, it's a problem. So when you feel angry and when it's getting out of control and you feel as if it is affecting others, what you need to do is you need to think about the pros and cons. What happens is sometimes we just think and act. So instead of that, you need to act and think is what many people do. Instead of that, you need to think about the pros and cons of your actions, how it is affecting others. That will act as a deterrent. Then another of your friends, what he's asked is how to manage elder stress during this lockdown. That is also a cause of concern. Now, what is happening is younger people are allowed to go out, but older people are discouraged to go out. There are people who have a social life. Older people who used to go to temples, mosques, churches, etc. on a daily basis. All of a sudden, you're asking them not to go out, stay at home, etc. So, in this situation, it is very difficult for them. So, you need to give them time. You need to ask them to exercise. You need to involve them in the household activities so that they don't feel left out. And again, I reiterate that if it starts getting out of control, anxiety is too much, etc., you need to see a qualified mental health professional like a psychiatrist. Okay. And let me see if there are any more questions. So another of your friends is telling that working from home is a big issue, due to which there is pressure from managers, have to work for about 10 to 12 hours. Also, there is a network issue. I don't know how to cope up with this stress. Okay, so see, I'm getting many people with the same problem, because initially what we had was maybe a 9 to 5 job, but now when you're working from home, it's extending from 9 to 9. You're expected to be available 24/7. Sometimes work does not happen during that. Work takes more. Some people are not working. You have to work extra. So it is, and along with that, you have to do the household chores. You have to manage the things at home. So it is taking a stress on everybody. So you need to compartmentalize things. You need to have a personal life. You need to have a professional life. You need to draw lines. You need to have adequate sleep. You need to reduce your extra screen time. Daily screen time could be difficult, but that extra screen time needs to be taken care of. Okay, so another of your friends. Okay, so some of them have asked me that when you have reduced personal accomplishment, would it lead to suicide? See, suicide can happen due to any reason. It could be an impulsive act. It could be due to stress, anxiety in life. So, but the most important thing about suicide is you can only prevent it. Once it happens, you can't do anything about it. And suicide could be due to multiple things. It could be due to depression, anxiety, drug abuse. It could be due to personality problems and people want to injure themselves, etc. So, the whole point about suicide is you can only prevent it. So, if you feel suicidal or you have somebody around who has certain suicidal tendencies, see, suicidal, like the first case which I mentioned at the start of the slide, start of the presentation, for a person who cut his hand. What his father was unfortunately not here. His mother and his brother noticed was that for the last few days he was quiet. He was not interacting with others. He was expressing ideas of hopelessness, helplessness, worthlessness. He was telling what is the point living. He was telling that he's not achieved anything. He was blaming himself for all his problems. But unfortunately, they could not identify that it was a depression. and only when he's cut his hand did his parents realize, did his mother realize that he was actually moving on to us. So there are a number of red flag lines of red flag signs of suicide. If you can identify them and take this person for treatment, which could be medication or behavioral management, you can prevent suicide. So another of your friends has asked out on the divorce rate, which is increasing. This is another major issue. And it's not the divorce rate, because now I don't think courts are functional, so you can't go there now. But there's a lot of conflict at home because everybody is at home. The kids are at home, the parents are at home, the grandparents are at home. There is no household help. So what is happening is there is a lot of issues, and these are unmanageable for both. And sometimes it's it's a lady at home who has to do everything, multitask. So many of these ladies are facing frustration issues, alcohol issues are there at home. So if you, for this, what you can do is, usually what happens is there is a communication gap. That is, many a times we think about certain things, but we don't tell our partner that. But we expect our partner to reciprocate. So if you can reduce the communication gap, if you can communicate properly and talk about the present and the future and not talk about the past, and avoid critical comments, you can avoid a lot of personal conflict at home. Plus, you need to have personal time for yourself. You need to have family time. You need to have family time with your kids, with your friends, with your partner, etc. Then other areas which are not touched. Okay, so one of your friends has said that, does deep breathing exercise help you when you are stressed out? See, more than when you are stressed out, deep breathing doesn't help. But if you practice these deep breathing exercises on a regular basis, what you find is that people who practice this relaxation exercises, deep breathing exercises, when they are anxious, they are able to control their anxiety better. So it is more of prevention than during deep breathing when you are stressed out, though it helps a little bit. One important thing which I want to mention to you is about is destructive coping mechanisms. Many times what we find is, when you are stressed, many people find distressing mechanisms like getting angry, injuring themselves, drinking, smoking, weed, etc. And taking out this on others, etc. So instead of doing these destructive coping mechanisms, what you can do is try to find the cause of your problem, try to talk it out to another person, try to solve it. If not, definitely seek help. Then okay, so another thing is this online thing. Many people have connectivity issues, many people are not so tech savvy, etc. And you are, see, many people are in their final year, many of their offers have not been accepted. So it is a difficult period for all of us, but that does not mean you leave it and go out. But if you go out now, you are at the risk of developing COVID. You need to stay at home, but you need to have a social circle. You need to be positive about the future. Life is all about being positive. You need to be positive. Think about the good things that happen in your life. Think about what you've planned. Work on it in such a way that, and develop future plans, like what I'm going to do for the next 1 week, what I'm going to do for the next 1 month, what I'm going to do for the next 3 months. So you need to have short-term plans, intermediate plans, you need to have long-term plans, and you need to work on it. And another of your friends has said that too much exposure to negative news is stressful. Yes, definitely. Today morning also I got up checking how many COVID cases are there in Kerala, India, and the world. So when you see a lot of negative news, everything looks negative. You start looking through a negative lens. You need to definitely know what is happening around, but too much of research on negative news can make you all disturbed. Let me check out whether there are any other questions. Okay, so another of your friends has asked whether meditation is good for everyone. See, meditation is good But when you are hyper anxious, you meditate, it may not help. But if you do meditation on a regular basis, yes, it need not be high-fi meditation, you need not go for a high-fi course, but simple breathing exercises, concentrating, meditating, etc. on a regular basis, if you do it for a sustained period, it can help. So another of your friends has asked a question whether food, fruits can see. It is not like, see, there is something called serotonin, which is a chemical in our body, which helps in controlling our emotions. Some fruits, vegetables, like the things which I mentioned, etc., like banana, etc., have excess of serotonin. But what we need to have, what I need to stress is you need to have a proper, healthy diet. That is, you need to take meals on a regular basis. It should be rich in fruits and vegetables. You need, if you are a non-vegetarian person, definitely you need to take non-veg food too in regulated quantities, not excess, not less. And you should be taking food on a regular time. Plus, you need to exercise on a regular basis. So you need to have a healthy, structured, disciplined lifestyle, even though it is COVID, it is lockdown, it is difficult period, and you are stuck at home, which is the case for many people now. Then, okay, so one of your friends is telling, how can I use positive self-talk? See, when you're depressed, when you're anxious, everything looks negative, just like I mentioned before. Negative thoughts come to you. When these negative thoughts come, into your mind, what happens is you get more anxious. You move on to a vicious cycle of anxiety, depression, negative thoughts, and it goes into a loop. So instead of that, what you need to do is you need to challenge these thoughts. You need to challenge these thoughts. You need to change these thoughts from negative to positive, and you need to move on. You need to break this vicious cycle and move on. And one of your friends is asking whether journaling this helps. Yes, definitely. To many of my patients who come for behavior management, the first thing which I ask them to write is a behavioral diary. A behavioral diary is to write on a regular basis the problems you face during that particular day. It's another thing that many people don't do it. But before you sleep, write for just 5 minutes you spend on what were the problems you faced during that particular day. So it helps because after some time you won't remember what it is. Two, you will have an insight on what your problem is. Three, as a therapist, I can help you how to handle it better. Plus, you will have an insight on how you handled it, and next time, real time, you can handle it better. So journaling, writing a behavior diary definitely helps, but just not writing it, working on it, finding solutions for it, and moving on helps. And again, I constantly tell is if the thing is beyond your control and if things are getting out of control, you need to seek help of a qualified mental health professional like a psychiatrist. And this is psychological problems, mental health issues are just like any other problem. It is due to certain neurochemical changes in your brain. It could be due to family history, it could be due to drug use, it could be due to no particular reason, it could be stress in life, or it could be due to a combination of all these things. But it is preventable, it is treatable, it is manageable, and it is not a life sentence. There is absolutely no stigma about it. You would have seen many people come out with psychological problems in the last few days. It is, see, just because you're educated or just because you're of socioeconomic status, education has absolutely nothing to do with psychological problems. But it can come to anybody, anytime. But the good thing, bottom line is, it is preventable, treatable, manageable, and you can get over it. Okay, and though your friends mentioned to me that it is a 2-hour talk from 11 to 1, usually what we see is the attention span of everybody is, including me, is 30 to 45 minutes. Beyond that, what happens is you lose interest. So that's why I purposefully kept the talk from 30 minutes to from 30 to 40 minutes and left the remaining for discussion. If you have any more things to communicate, please do message it over to your friend or to the chat here. I'll try to help you out. So another person has again messaged this, can you explain more about managing conflicts at home? So I'll just tell that again. Basically, most marital problems or most interpersonal problems or most relationship problems happen when there is a communication breakdown or when there's a wavelength problem, when there's a trust deficit. But the bottom line is a communication problem when partners, it could be husband, wife, it could be boyfriend, girlfriend, or it could be just two friends. When that communication, there's a communication barrier. It could be due to a wavelength issue, it could be due to some stressor. But when there is a communication problem, you don't express things to the other person. You start getting stuck in the past things. You don't think about the present and future. So what we tell is these five things: forget about the past, think about the present and future, avoid self-critical comments, avoid comments about the family, and if things go really out of hand, just leave the area so that it doesn't escalate. Because sometimes it starts on a very small thing, you start criticizing each other, um, you start with a small thing, finally it goes to the partner, it moves on to the family members, and it reaches some other area. And what happens is it doesn't stop there, but it remains in the mind of that other person. Next time a fight comes up, that also comes. So start on a clean slate, have a proper communication, express your feelings to the other person in a way that it doesn't hurt the other person, and try to problem solve, try to adjust. And if it does not work at your level, definitely see a qualified marital therapy specialist like a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a counselor who can help you solve these person problems, because a third person may be able to relate more to such issues. Okay, so anything else? If there is anything else, you can ask, message, so that I can help you guys out. Moderator, any more doubts?
No, sir. Hopefully, all had cleared it. I think those who
Yeah.
wish to
Most of
ask
them, I
you.
think, most of them have covered. And thank you everybody for coming on a Sunday and hearing me. The whole point of this discussion was how to identify stress, how to manage stress, and how to go about it and take care of it, so that each of you becomes a stress expert. And it is difficult times for us, but we should be optimistic. We have overcome even difficult problems in the past, and I'm sure all of us will emerge stronger physically, mentally, and in every area, and move forward.
Doctor, let me
Thank you.
wind up this section. Let me wind up this
Yeah,
section. Now, I am
yeah.
taking the duty to convey word of thanks. Doctor, thank you, doctor, for sparing your valuable time during the daily routine time for us in this Sunday itself for about 1 hour. And I'm sure that for all the participants, the session was very much worthwhile, very much interesting, and new aspects were covered, and it touched our mind. I hope all our participants will feel the same what I stated above. And a general reminder for all participants, you can convey your personal remarks or feedback of this session. And this chat will be recorded, and this feedback will be given to our doctor. Your valuable feedbacks, or also give feedbacks for our sessions. And this is our second session. First one was with Maitrein, and second one was with our doctor. So you can give any valuable suggestions, so any put forward that we should improve. And doctor, our club works under CET, College of Engineering Trivandrum, and our club started its working from 2012, Bhumitra Sena CET, and it is our program coordinator is Dr. Biju Longinos. He is basically a geologist, an expert in giving real life, doing real life investigations, etc. Due to some net problems, he was trying to attend our session, but due to some net problems, he informed us that to convey his sincere thanks and gratitude for to you for being part of our session for your class. And on behalf of our club and our college, College of Engineering Trivandrum, I, on behalf of all of our members and all of our participants, convey our sincere gratitude to you, sir, Doctor. Thank you.